French actress Maria Schneider was launched into the spotlight at age 19 when she co-starred with Marlon Brando in the erotic drama Last Tango in Paris. The film, and in particular one rape scene, made her famous, but it also haunted her the rest of her life.
What if the role of a lifetime turned into a nightmare? In 1972, a young French actress landed what should have been her big break. But instead of fame, she faced a public backlash over one scandalous scene. Why? Because in that scene, she was brutally violated on camera, something that left a dark stain on her life and career until the day she passed away. But why did this happen, and who was behind forcing such a disturbing, lewd scene onto her? Buckle up, because we're about to dive into the tragic, harrowing story of this actress, as every shocking and unsettling detail was recorded for the world to see. The movie star who was violated on screen. Born into a tangled web of celebrity drama, Maria Helene Schneider's life started in Paris with a mix of glamour and heartbreak. Imagine being the child of a famous French actor, Daniele Gelin, and a captivating model, Christine Schneider. Sounds dreamy, right? Not quite. Daniele Gelin never recognized Maria as his own because she was the result of an affair while he was married to another woman, Daniele Delorme. Now, how's that for family tension? Born in 1952, Maria didn't get public acknowledgement from her father until the 1970s, decades later. Growing up, she felt the sting of that rejection, as her father distanced himself completely. So it was up to her model mother to raise her near the French-German border. But here's the kicker. Even her mother at some point decided she wasn't cut out for parenting either. What do you do when both your parents want out? Christine handed Maria off to a nurse for 2 years before moving her to live with her maternal uncle, Michel Schneider, and his family. Little Maria was shuffled from place to place, but eventually she found a fan in her younger cousin Vanessa, who idolized Maria and collected every picture and clipping she could find of her famous cousin. But did that family love come too late? By her teenage years, Maria was already hooked on movies, hitting the cinemas up to 4 times a week. At 15, after a heated fight with her mother, she bolted to Paris to chase her dreams. Modeling and taking small acting gigs to make ends meet, she was just getting by. Then came her big break, meeting none other than famed producer Bernardo Bertolucci. He offered her a role that would make her a global sensation. But did it bring the fairy tale ending she'd hoped for? Or did stardom come with a darker twist? Stay tuned for the shocking truth. Last Tango in Paris. At just 19, Maria Schneider snagged a career-defining role starring alongside Marlon Brando in Last Tango in Paris. Sounds like every young actress's dream, right? Wrong. The film, shot in Paris and directed by Bernardo Bertolucci, wasn't just controversial, it was a scandal that shook the world. Thanks to its provocative, sensual theme, the movie sparked outrage but also became a massive box office hit. With this much drama, how could people ignore it? You either left the theater in righteous fury or feeling a little too warm under the collar. Which camp would you fall into? Critics were split. Some were quick to condemn the film's immorality, while others couldn't help but secretly revel in the lusty pleasures the movie served up. The movie left everyone talking. Pleasure and outrage flowed through audiences as they tried to wrap their heads around the intense adult content, especially considering the relatively conservative era it was released in. But in the middle of all this chaos was young Maria Schneider, whose life was about to be turned upside down. How do you handle being suddenly viewed as the poster girl for scandal and lust? The public's harsh judgment came down especially hard after that notorious scene, the one where Brando's character violates Maria's against her will in a graphic, humiliating act involving butter. Yes, you heard that right, butter, and what's even worse, the entire thing was a surprise for Maria. Director Bertolucci and Brando cooked up this shocking moment without her knowledge until just before shooting. Imagine finding out about this right before the cameras roll. Maria's real tears of shame were captured for all to see as Brando's character had his way with her, completely ignoring the emotional trauma she was experiencing. While the world watched in shock, the renowned actor was focused on, well, relieving his tension at the expense of a 19-year-old co-star. But what was Last Tango in Paris actually about? The film told the story of a young Parisian woman, played by Maria, who gets entangled in a relationship with an older American businessman, played by Brando. Brando's character, a 48-year-old widower, demands that their relationship be purely physical, leaving Maria's character to navigate a deeply unsettling emotional landscape. The film was so erotically charged that it grossed an eye-popping $36 million worldwide. But at what cost to Maria? Was the fame worth the trauma? What happens when a film becomes iconic for all the wrong reasons? Last Tango in Paris may have generated box office gold, but it came at a deep emotional cost for Maria Schneider. That infamous molestation scene, not in the script she signed up for. Maria had no idea she'd be forced into that traumatic moment, which was nothing more than an erotic fantasy cooked up by director Bernardo Bertolucci. Once he shared his twisted idea with Marlon Brando, who had just come off the massive success of The Godfather, Brando was all in. Going nude for authenticity, no problem for him. But the real problem? They left Maria completely in the dark. While on set, Bertolucci spotted a stick of butter and it was like an unspoken plan clicked between him and Brando. Maria wasn't part of that conversation. When she arrived, Bertolucci had the uncomfortable task of dropping the bombshell on her. She was about to be molested against her will in the next scene. Naturally, Maria protested, but the two men pressed on, trying to reassure her. Brando, ever the professional, even said, "Don't worry, it's only a movie." How could she resist that pressure? As the cameras rolled, Marlon carried out the crude and violent act while Maria's tears flowed. But here's the thing, her tears were real. She wasn't acting. She was genuinely crying throughout the entire scene. As she later revealed, the humiliation and pain she experienced were completely authentic. And when it was all over, Marlon zipped up and walked away without a word of apology or even a hint of comfort. Can you imagine? Maria, left on the floor, was devastated. She confessed later that she felt utterly violated by both Bertolucci and Brando. Her only solace? The fact that the scene was shot in just one take. She couldn't bear to think what might have happened if they had to do it again, but the trauma didn't end there. At the movie's premiere, Maria's emotional wounds were ripped wide open. Attending with her friend Esther Anderson, she was unprepared for the gut-wrenching impact of watching that scene on the big screen. As soon as it played, Maria panicked. She screamed and ran out of the theater, fearing how the audience would react. Esther had to chase her down in the street and try to calm her. That moment was a breaking point. From that point on, Maria's life spiraled out of control. To numb the pain, she turned to pot, heroin, and other drugs, trying to escape the nightmare that had become her reality. That one movie role wrecked her life. Years later, Bertolucci openly admitted he wanted Maria to feel humiliated. But was it worth it? How far should directors go for the sake of art? And what happens when the price is a person's mental health? From the moment Last Tango in Paris hit theaters, Maria Schneider was trapped in the shadow of her most traumatic role. Producers flooded her with offers to play nothing but sensual, erotic characters, roles she vehemently rejected. Desperate to break free from the stereotype, she sought roles that would preserve her dignity and separate her from the girl forever burned into the public's mind, the girl pinned down, exposed, and violated on screen. Despite her efforts, the image of that humiliating scene wouldn't fade, and it haunted her career. Maria's disdain for director Bernardo Bertolucci ran deep. She could never forgive him for the manipulation and coercion he used to force her into that infamous moment. She kept her distance from him for the rest of her life, never wanting to cross paths with the man who, in her view, had betrayed her so profoundly. Reflecting on Bertolucci, Maria described him with palpable disgust. He was fat, sweaty, and manipulative. She admitted she had a bad feeling about him from the start, but felt trapped. Bertolucci's manipulation extended beyond just that one scene. He played mind games with both her and Marlon Brando throughout the film. Some days he'd greet Maria warmly, while on others he'd completely ignore her. This erratic behavior left Maria constantly on edge. Her experience on Last Tango in Paris only solidified her already troubled relationship with men. Since childhood, she had struggled to trust men, largely because of her estrangement from her father, whom she met for the first time at age 15. With no male role models in her life and a family dominated by women, Maria had been skeptical of men long before Tango. Bertolucci's betrayal only deepened that mistrust. Years later, Bertolucci candidly shared his perspective on the infamous scene during an interview. He explained that the idea came to him and Brando the morning of the shoot. In his words, "It was in the script that Marlon had to forcefully have his way with her, and both of them were having breakfast. On the floor of the flat where they were shooting, there was a baguette and butter, and we looked at each other, and without saying anything, we knew what we wanted." The audience laughed uncomfortably at his recollection, but the gravity of his confession remained chilling. Bertolucci admitted that he deliberately kept Maria in the dark about the scene because he wanted her to react as a girl, not as an actress. He wanted her genuine humiliation on camera. He said that he thought she hated him and also Marlon because they didn't tell her that there was butter going to be used as a lubricant. When asked if he regretted the scene, Bertolucci didn't flinch. He said he didn't regret it but felt guilty, defending his actions with a cold philosophy. To make movies sometimes and obtain something, you have to be completely free. But at what cost? For Maria, that freedom came at the expense of her emotional and mental well-being, as the trauma from that scene left scars she would carry for the rest of her life. Maria Schneider's experience on Last Tango in Paris left her scarred for life, a wound deepened by Bernardo Bertolucci's own chilling words. In an interview, he said that he didn't want Maria to act on her humiliation and her rage. He wanted Maria to feel, not to act the rage and the humiliation. Then she hated me for all her life. Honestly, what did he expect? Bertolucci's confession underscored his decision to prioritize cinematic authenticity over Maria's emotional well-being. He believed that the raw emotion in that infamous scene would make the movie more genuine, even if it meant exploiting Maria's vulnerability. Years later, Maria reflected on her experience with regret and anger. She blamed her youth and naivety for going through with the scene. Her frustration was palpable when she lamented how she should have called her agent or had her lawyer come to the set, because you can't force someone to do something that isn't in the script, but at the time she didn't know that. The reality of having unwittingly played out Bertolucci's erotic fantasies left her feeling humiliated and furious. This violation wasn't just on screen. It followed her everywhere, and the public image of her as the girl from that scandalous scene clung to her like a shadow. Offers to play similar roles kept rolling in, but Maria turned them all down, desperate to distance herself from the sensual image that was unfairly imposed on her. The world saw her as an object of lust, but inside, Maria was someone entirely different. She struggled to reconcile that difference, especially when people would approach her with inappropriate remarks as if she were the character she portrayed on screen. "People thought I was like the girl in the movie," she said, deeply hurt. To escape the painful reality of being forever typecast, Maria turned to drugs, eventually becoming hooked on heroin. What should have been a career breakthrough turned into a personal nightmare. The fame that followed The Last Tango in Paris wasn't the glamorous success Maria had hoped for. It was a burden. She didn't enjoy fame at all, and it weighed on her to the point where she attempted to take her own life multiple times. "I suppose it was like a suicide when I overdosed 2 or 3 times on drugs, but each time I woke up when the ambulance arrived," she admitted, acknowledging that her survival was by the grace of God. The trauma Maria carried was further complicated by the bizarre dynamic between her and Marlon Brando during the film. Contrary to public perception, there was no romantic or sexual attraction between them. In fact, Maria saw Brando more as a father figure due to their vast age difference. The intimacy forced upon her in the film was a complete violation of that personal boundary, contributing to the emotional chaos she struggled with. Throughout her ordeal, Maria narrowly escaped not only death but also prison. Maria Schneider narrowly escapes prison. Outraged by the film's obscene content, a private prosecution led by Gino Paoli Latin, the prosecutor of Bologna, took the movie to court, claiming it violated public decency. The legal charges were based on the film's depictions of explicit self-pleasure, lewd acts, and profane nudity, accompanied by off-screen sounds of sexual pleasure. Though the initial prosecution failed, the appellate court in Bologna shocked everyone in 1973 by sentencing Maria, Marlon Brando, and director Bernardo Bertolucci to 2 months in prison and a hefty fine. The sentence was thankfully overturned in December of that year, sparing Maria from the harsh reality of prison, though the stress from the ordeal took a significant toll on her mental health. During this tumultuous time, Maria found solace in her lover, Joan Townsend, a photographer who was confined to a psychiatric hospital due to her schizophrenia. Maria, needing comfort and connection, made the extreme decision to voluntarily admit herself to the same psychiatric hospital in Rome where Joan was located, allowing them to be together. The public was shocked when news broke that the Last Tango star had committed herself, and everyone wondered why. In her response, Maria explained that she did it out of loyalty to Joan, who was locked away, and the answer seemed to satisfy the public's curiosity. Yet despite her loyalty and the personal sacrifices she made, Maria's struggles were far from over. She found herself overshadowed by Marlon Brando's performance, with the spotlight almost entirely on him. Instead of being praised for her own contribution, Maria felt the public and industry stripped her of her dignity, reducing her to an object of sexual desire. Even as she faced relentless controversy, people, including Hollywood icons like Brad Pitt, were hailing Brando's performance as pure artistry. Brad Pitt even said Brando's role in The Last Tango in Paris was the purest poetry imaginable in dynamic motion, and expressed that he would have wanted to play Brando's part. What stung Maria the most was the uneven treatment she received on set. While Bertolucci meticulously refined Brando's character, encouraging him to improvise and channel his own life into the role, Maria was merely treated as a prop for Marlon's lust-driven scenes. Bertolucci's focus on Brando's artistic freedom came at Maria's expense, leaving her without guidance or support to showcase her talent. When the movie premiered at the New York Film Festival, tickets were sold at an outrageous price of $150 each, and people were willing to pay for the chance to see the now infamous molestation scene. For Maria, this wasn't an artistic triumph, but a painful reminder that her suffering had been commercialized. It left her with nothing but bitterness, as she was constantly reminded of how the world viewed her, not as a serious actress, but as a symbol of exploitation. Vanessa Schneider's bombshell memoir. So, recently, when the word got out about the whole ordeal with Maria, the internet and movie stars alike exploded with outrage. Marlon Brando and Bertolucci were in the hot seat, facing backlash for their roles in the scandal. But wait, who spilled the tea? None other than Maria's own cousin, Vanessa Schneider, in her memoir, My Cousin Maria Schneider, a memoir released after Maria's death. And guess who helped translate it into English? Molly Ringwald. Yeah, you heard that right. But here's the question. How deep does this rabbit hole of Hollywood scandal go? The book caused a fresh wave of fury in the industry, shedding light on how a young, innocent Maria was exploited by two powerful men who seemed more interested in fulfilling their own desires than making art. Yikes, right? People are starting to wonder, should the geniuses of the past really keep their titles if they achieved greatness through manipulation? Marlon Brando's legacy, once untouchable, is now in serious trouble. His reputation? Trashed. Chris Evans even tweeted that he can never look at Brando the same way again, calling it disgusting and expressing his rage. Can you blame him? Other stars are piling on too, sharing their outrage. But here's the kicker. Brando's family is not having it. His son, Miko Brando, who's 55, is out here defending his dad's honor. He insists the public has gotten it all wrong. Miko passionately said, "That's not my father. He wasn't that bad. He marched with Martin Luther King. He stood for human rights." Thanks for watching the video. What are your thoughts on Hollywood's big names predating on vulnerable stars? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.